Hello, welcome to my new video about Wonder Woman. I was reading Tom King's most recent couple of arcs after the whole Sovereign thing ended with issue 19 of his run, so issues 20 through 22, and I noticed a couple things that made me think back through both Tom King's writing of Batman, because Batman was a guest star in 20 and 21, and about the Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor romance, as 22 and a lot of the book has been heavily focused on the Wonder Woman Steve Trevor romance. So, to start with, I have Wonder Woman number 20 here. Um, and I just want to read sections of this section near the end of this story. This is the first of two parts, but at the beginning of the book, Wonder Woman calls Batman for help because her mother, Hippolyta, who is currently a god on Mount Olympus, is accused of murdering the god of war, Ares. And Wonder Woman says, "You have faith or you don't." And Batman says, "Your gods aren't my gods," because he's a grump. And Wonder Woman says, "Yes? And what church does the Batman attend?" And Batman grumpily says, "God isn't in church. He's in the alley." Meaning, of course, that he thinks that everything is reducible to tragedy and there is no one in power. But later, after Bruce is literally struck by lightning of a god, Zeus, he's lying in bed and Diana is helping him recover, and he says, "You asked me about God. I lied. He isn't in the alley. I wasn't raised with much religion, but it felt, as a boy, that there was something good above us. And then my parents, they were so kind, and they died while I watched. What kind of God would do that? I knew there was nothing above us but sky. Then I met you, and you were kind, like mother and father come again. Diana, after knowing you, I went home and looked up and I prayed." And I think that's interesting. It's very similar to what Tom King wrote about what Bruce feels about Superman, although Superman doesn't feel nearly as divine with the religious connections. And in fact, when Tom King writes Superman, he always says that Superman believes in the faith that his parents raised him in, which is sort of a Midwestern Christianity type thing that don't get a lot of specifics of, but he says things like, "Ma and Pa believed in God, and I believe in Ma and Pa." Now, in one of my favorite issues of Tom King's Batman, and you can tell that because I have it signed by both Tom King and the artist, Lee Weeks, this is Batman number 53, Bruce Wayne is on a jury, and he talks to one of the members who's wearing a cross, and she asks him, "Do you believe in God, Bruce?" "Yes, that's just it. I used to. My father was a Christian. He held hallow the immortal soul, heaven, the Father and the Son, giving your will to your Lord, trusting him with that will. He wanted me to believe too, but he wanted me to come to it on my own. We went to church, he told me all the stories, talked a lot about what we can control, what we can't. Later, after, and then we have a gorgeous piece by Lee Weeks showing the death of Bruce's parents. I was upset. I put aside believing in a deity, or believing in anything my father thought had saved him. I couldn't really see anything that had saved him. So I think it's odd to me that King, who wrote this and said that Thomas Wayne was a Christian and raised Bruce in the church and wanted him to believe in his faith, said that Bruce wasn't raised with much religion in this later story. And I don't know. Maybe because his parents died when he was so young, Tom King thinks that Bruce wouldn't think that it was with much religion. But I don't know. It seems like Tom King kind of forgot his own thing. And I like both of these pieces, but the tension, the seeming tension between them feels off to me. Not that I think either is a bad comic, just that it's odd that Tom King seems to have changed his mind about how Bruce was raised with religion. Now, the next piece is not as deep. It's really just a fun thing that I noticed about how people write Steve and Diana in a romance. Now, here's issue 22 about Mouse Man, which is supposed to be silly. And we have an interesting opening. At the beginning, there's a flashback, and it says, near the beginning. And we have Steve waking up in bed alone after spending the night. We are led to believe this is the first time Steve and Diana spent the night together. And Steve says that it was the best night of his life, and he's feeling sad because Diana left before they could talk in the morning. But of course, Diana, being a superhero, had to go save the U.S. Capitol from giant mice. And so later, when they finally get a chance to talk during the battle with giant mice, Diana says, Stephen, I should have told you earlier. It is hard for me. It is new to me. I also enjoyed our time together last night. Very much. Wait, that's it? Said Steve. I thought there'd be, more. And then Diana says, I do apologize that I had to leave early this morning from our time together. And Steve responds, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Diana says, I worry about everything. And I understand if you do not wish to. Diana, yes? Sorry? What? You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. The strongest, the bravest, the kindest. And I was wondering if you wanted to go get some coffee sometime. Yes, Stephen. That sounds lovely. And we have a very nice picture of Diana in the morning sun with all these gorgeous yellows and golds and Stephen's hopeful face. And then they start kissing, and you have the stupid villain monarch because he's monarching and sovereigning all over the place. So that's how Tom King views the beginning of their relationship. He views them as having gone out and then spent the night together, and then interrupted by superhero antics, and then they manage to find a way to say they like each other and start going out. Now, this is Greg Rucka's run from Rebirth, the second run that Rucka wrote. The first time that Rucka wrote Wonder Woman, Steve was married to Etta. It was in the George Perez continuity where Steve was like a generation older than Diana, and Rucka chose to have no love interests during his first run. But in the second run, he was really focused on setting up the relationship between Diana and Steve Trevor as one of her first main relationships in the DC universe. And so he has this scene early in the run. This is issue 9 of 25 of his run. And Steve and Diana are sort of talking to each other after a mission to save the cheetah. So Steve says, I'll go first. And then Diana says, Steve, and then they have that thing, you first, no you. So Steve says, I've missed you. I've missed you a lot. Diana responds, I've missed you as well. You always know how to reach me. I know. But you didn't. You had somebody already. And that's talking about Steve being sad because he was in love with Diana, but Diana was in a relationship with Superman. This is right after the New 52, where there were most of the New 52, the 5 years, from 2011 to 2016, Wonder Woman and Superman were in a romantic relationship. So Diana says, "We do not always know why our hearts choose as they do. If you are asking why him and not you, Steve, I've asked the same question. He's Superman. Or was, anyway. I'm not really up on everything that's been going on there. One tends to avoid giving too much time or attention to things that cause us pain." And Diana says, "Yes, we do. Being with him was easy. No, not easy, simple. It was, believe it or not, uncomplicated. Well, when you both can fly." And Diana says, "I believe in love, Steve. I know there are many who think that is foolish, but I truly do believe in it. I believe we should be allowed to love one another and to do so without restraint. I believe that love is not limited, but limitless. I am, perhaps this is arrogant, forgive me, good at loving. I am not good at romance. We have circled each other for years, but we have never truly tried, despite what we each know is in our hearts. I'm not at my best, Steve. My memory is playing tricks on me. I fear I remember things that never were and forgotten things that are. Diana. But I have never forgotten the survivor. And this is a reference, of course, to Steve being the one survivor when she first discovered Man's World. I have never forgotten you. I am now, and I always will be, in your corner. Anywhere you go, anything you do, anything you need, it's yours. As long as I live, Diana. And there's a beat, and then Diana says, I'm going to kiss you now, Steve. I am entirely okay with you doing that, Diana. And then, of course, we have Liam Sharp and the glorious Laura Martin on colors doing this full makeout of Steve and Diana. And this is Steve when he has his beard. They decided to have a beard with Steve to differentiate it. So, and then, of course, they're interrupted by superhero stuff because this is, of course, a superhero comic. And then we go back to the end of the run. Now, this is issue 25, the final issue in the run. And it's drawn by both Liam Sharp, who drew that scene I just showed you, and also Bilquis Evely, who is more famous now for doing Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. But I'll still always remember her as being the artist who stepped in after Nicholas Scott stepped out on Rucka's Wonder Woman in Rebirth. So this scene, of course, is drawn by Liam Sharp. You have bearded Steve. He's feeling sad. And he says, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Channel Alpha, this number is recognized. Ident sequence go. And Steve says, Whiskey Mike 1942. Now that's, of course, William Moulton Marston, WMM, 1942, when Wonder Woman was created. Trevor, Steve, confirmed. Authorization, confirmed. Connecting. Steven, says Diana. Diana, hey, this is a Justice League comms channel, Steven. Has something happened? No, you gave me the number. I wanted to check in. Me and the guys, we got your place set up. Everything set up for you. That was very kind. Well, figured it was about time you had a place to lay your head regularly. Anyway, I'm here, just wanted to know when you'd be back. I was thinking I'd make you dinner to celebrate. I'm not certain when I'll be there. I am dealing with a matter at the moment. I'm sorry. No worries. I know you've got a lot on that plate. I'll be here. And of course, Steve has flowers and wine and everything set up because he wants a romantic evening, but he's feeling sad because, of course, Diana has superhero stuff. So you see that parallel with what Tom King was writing. And then we skip to the end, and there's just a 4-page scene. And this, of course, is drawn by Bilquis Evely. So Rucka kind of split up the story to have pieces drawn by Sharp, who is the main artist of the run, and pieces drawn by Evely, who is the backup artist every other issue. And so I like that he kind of split it up, and then they had different choices. So like Sharp drew Steve with a beard because that's how he drew Steve through most of the run, and then Evely drew Steve shaved, to kind of call back to the first part of the run, because she did kind of the flashback sections when he didn't have the beard. So Diana arrives at her home at night after a long day, and she says, Stephen, you know how you said you weren't great with romance, but you were good at love? I suspect I'm kind of bad at both. So Steve is kind of playing it off, and Diana says, you're better at it than you might think. You shaved. Yeah, well, I thought, like when we first met, I had this whole thing planned. I was going to surprise you with everything Chris and Manny and Davey and I had done. The whole place set up for you. A house for you. A home, finally. Not an embassy, not a hotel suite. A place to call yours. I made you dinner. I even went full cliche and got you roses. And then I fell asleep before you got home. I suspect that's because you were tired. Yeah, well, we did move a lot of furniture. And then they kiss. I made dinner. I'm not hungry. You want me to show you around your house? I would like to see the bedroom first. And then it ends with a scene of Steve and Diana sleeping in the bed, and is called Perfect. And that's a multi-layered reference because, of course, as you see on this alternate cover signed by the artist Jenny Frison, this issue is about Diana's lasso of truth, which Greg Rucka likes to call the Golden Perfect. And she loses it in the previous issues because she uses it to bind the two gods of fear and envy, I think it is, the sons of Ares. And so the lasso is missing, and she goes through this whole thing, and she's able to get it back. And like many things, it's a circle. So there's this whole idea of a loop going back to the beginning where Steve shaves. And there's also this idea that the truth is perfect. And now that Steve and Diana are together, it's perfect. Like there's this whole multi-layered meaning that I really like about it. Now I wanted to draw out a couple of parallels and also a couple of pieces that are kind of in tension. This is set about 10 years after the quote unquote beginning of the DC universe. That's the timeline that DC allowed Greg Rucka to set up with Wonder Woman Year One, and then the present day story of the lies and then the truth. The opening of Tom King's run says near the beginning, so that would imply it was much closer to Year One than 10 years later. So part of me likes to headcanon that the night after with Mouse Man actually happens right after this issue. That doesn't really work because this is supposed to be much newer versus much older. It doesn't work wholly, but I still kind of believe it in the same way that 10-year-old me believes that Peter Falk in The Princess Bride as the grandfather is actually secretly Wesley, and that's why he says "as you wish." So it doesn't really work if you think too hard about it, but if you think about it as a magic fairy tale, I think it does work. Tom King and Greg Rucka both write Diana as having an accent. They write her as English not being her first language. She's much more formal. She sounds a bit stiff in the way she talks. And I think that is nice. A lot of people write Wonder Woman kind of like just modern American. She's great and everything is. But I like the distance that you get with both King and Rucka. Now, Rucka doesn't write her nearly as far. Like Tom King writes like really far, very much English as a second language. Rucka kind of is closer to the norm, but she still has a little bit of an elevated or distinct style, which she has to think about every word before she says it. Both of them have Diana being just really great at setting an example of showing love, caring about others, wanting the good for others, and having an emotional connection to other people, even those who are against her. But they also like to play with her being a bit of a fish out of water, playing with that Captain America, doesn't know how everything works in this new world she finds herself in. She loves Steve, and she's in love with Steve, but she's not sure how to say that because she didn't grow up with stories of, the cute boy and the girl getting together. So she has no pattern for that. And I think that even though King is writing a much younger Steve and Diana, I would say closer to the early 20s, whereas obviously Ruck is writing 30s, early 30s, with a full decade of experience together, adventures, even though they haven't been romantic together. I There's some similarities. It struck me as having a similar approach, not the same approach, but I see the intent, and I appreciate it. And as someone who really enjoyed the romance in Rucka's Rebirth Wonder Woman run, I liked the similarity in Tom King's. I want to say it's Dawn of DC. I think it's Dawn of DC, but it's currently the All In era. But yeah, Wonder Woman number 20 and 22 compared to Batman number 53 and Wonder Woman Rebirth numbers 9 and 25. Um, I'm enjoying this Wonder Woman run. I do recommend people check it out. It's definitely got flaws. I don't 100% say I like everything in it, but I am enjoying a lot of it. So, hope you enjoyed these really random thoughts for about 20 minutes. Have a great day.